Avi did put this matter very well. And to me, I think he summarized the whole issue we are discussing. This was not a social health initiative. It was a commercial initiative. I think that statement says all about SHA. Now, that being the case, let's look at what the law says. The law says when the Auditor General does a report, she tables that report in Parliament. So after tabling the report in Parliament, she has actually accomplished a constitutional mandate. Now, the question is, what does Parliament do with that report? Parliament now through PIC, and I can tell you for sure, when the report is tabled by Auditor General, Committee of Health has no business with that report. It's purely PAC and PIC. So the issues my colleague here is discussing don't come into this discussion. Because she'll have looked at the books, she'll have said whether things were done in line with the law or not. Now, the problem where it is coming is that when Parliament now gets this report, we start pushing the same report back to the executive. That's what the problem is. And that's why I agree with those who are saying Parliament has failed. Why? We should be able to say this particular office or officer has been identified to have misappropriated public resources. On that basis, which committee takes over in terms of impeachment and all that? But you see, the question is, who is going to be the first one to bury the cat? In a situation where we know what is happening in Parliament. You see now with the broad-based, who talks for Kenyans? It's like everybody now is part of the government. So there are these issues which are really critical. And I think if we want to have this country, Parliament needs to take back their power and position. So that when this report comes to Parliament, if a certain CS is being assessed through this report to have misappropriated public resources, or our officers, or his officers, and the CS have done that, then the law is very clear what we need to do with such a CS. And I think the threshold in terms of requirement, constitutional requirement, to impeach either the CS or the president, I can see some areas where these thresholds have been met. It's only that Parliament is not taking that initiative to do what is expected of them. So instead, we push this back to the DPP, we push these things back to the DCI, to the ACC, but who is the appointing authority in these institutions? So it's a circus, I can tell you for sure, it's a circus. And I think if we really want to help this country, if we really want to help this country, the Auditor General has done our work. Can Parliament do their work through PAC? So that PAC reports are taken up. In Parliament, we have a committee called Implementation Committee. That's the committee which is supposed to follow up on all parliamentary resolutions. So that when a Parliament resolutes on a matter, that committee is supposed to take it over and ensure that it's implemented. But do you even know who is the chair of that committee? You know, we have said this many times. Parliament is a situation where you have the majority and the minority. Parliament, our democracy requires that on any matter, you sort it out through voting. And always the majority carry the day. The minority will have their say. The majority carry their day. So in a situation where the law is that clear, that when you go on a matter and is put for voting, you either vote yes or no, and the yes carried, what will warrant you to resign out of it? What?
Failure by Parliament.
You'll have agreed to have. So unless we say, and the Kenyans have said, unless there's a law, I don't think Avik would be able to help us, as a senior lawyer, whether there's a way Parliament in totality could be dissolved and then we forget about it, we get a new one. Are there lessons which could have been learned from those earlier funds, which would inform this ASLA fund? And I think those statements were all ignored. Now the ASLA fund is actually in the same position where the Women Development Fund was, where the Youth Development Fund was, facing the same challenges, where Kenyans have taken loans and they have not paid. When you look at the details of the report, it even says people under the age of 18 have also accessed the resources. You wonder, how do you give money to somebody under 18 in form of a loan, somebody who doesn't even have an identity card, you know? So there are so many questions in some of these signature projects of Kenya Kwanza. You ask yourself whether at any point due diligence was done before the implementation started. And to me, these are the issues. And that's why you see the Auditor General is now picking these issues. And one thing I like about the Auditor General, she has the right personnel to do the work. People will take time to look at all these details and give us a final report. And what we should be asking ourselves now, in this panel, is, now, are we in a situation where, can we say today that let's do away with the SHA, let's do away with the ASLA fund, let's do away with the housing project to save Kenyans the money we are losing, and then come up with projects which are going to be of help to our people? Okay. That's a big question. Yes, if we can answer that question, I think the way our governance structure is structured, we expect it to be independent, but at some point independence. And I think what we have lost is this independence. That you find that even as Parliament does their work, there's a lot of interference from the executive. Even as judiciary do their work, there's a lot of interference from I think what I've been saying is, maybe time has come when we review our governance structure and say, are we getting it right? Because in a situation where then we are all over the place, then we will not help this country. We will remain where we are.
Yes, Honorable Madenge.